Hi guys, I'm Liv and this is my channel Endless Pages. Today's video is going to be the final reading wrap up for 2021 and I'm going to tell you guys about all 5 books that I read in December. First up, in December I read a young adult historical fiction, that being Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lo. This is a romance story, so we follow Lily, who's our main character, and Lily is a Chinese American living in Chinatown, San Francisco in the 50s, and Lily kind of has always questioned her identity and her sexuality, and then she meets this girl called Kathleen who goes to her school, and her and Kathleen go to this place called the Telegraph Club, which is a lesbian bar, and then we start to see Kathleen and Lily start to get romantically involved, but also there's a bit of historical context of the time, a thing called the Red Scare, which is spreading through America, and her dad is at risk at being deported. So the book is about her and Kathleen, despite everything of the time, risking everything pretty much for their love. I loved this book. I loved reading from Lily's perspective. It was really interesting. A point that was brought up in this book is that we don't see a lot of experiences of Chinese Americans when talking about being part of the LGBT community of that time, so I think that brought an interesting perspective as her balancing hiding her sexuality but at the same time the conflict between her family and her culture as well, which was it brought a different angle to this book, which I found really interesting to read. I also really liked reading the chapters that were from the perspective of her auntie and her mother when they were younger. I thought this added really interesting levels to the story, and I wish we had have seen a couple of more chapters from their perspective, because I really enjoyed reading those chapters, and despite them not moving the story forward, I think they were interesting and kind of helped the pacing of the book. Another thing, I really would have liked to get to know Kathleen just like a little bit better. Don't get me wrong, I still loved their romance and I thought they were absolutely adorable together and super cute, but I think I just would have loved them a little bit more if I had got to know Kathleen a bit better. I know that there's a lot going on, especially them balancing with the historical information of the time, and I get that that's kind of the main point of the book, but just a little bit more from Kathleen's perspective, or just a little bit more information about her or her family or something, I think would have added just that extra little bit to the book. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. This is not a topic that I know much on or have read much about, so I'm definitely intrigued to read more after reading this book. I thought it was beautiful, it was written beautifully, and the romance was super cute and adorable. This book was a little bit confronting and hard to read in points, but that's the point. It's not meant to be an easy, happy-go-lucky read. It's meant to be historically accurate and educate you, so I thought it was challenging, but in a good way. I rated this book 5 stars. Okay, so the next book is definitely my favourite of December, and that is Cersei by Madeline Miller. I love this book so much. It's definitely all-time favourite now, so I'm too excited to sum it up. Okay, basically Cersei is a Greek mythology. It's based off the book The Odyssey, and Cersei is the daughter of Helios, who is the Titan god of the sun, and she's seen as not to be strong and mighty like her father and not beautiful like her mother. And then one day they discover that Cersei has witchcraft. She's basically a witch, and she's banished to this island because Zeus sees her power as a threat to the gods. So she's banished to live out her life in isolation on this island, and the book follows all the different visitors that Cersei gets to the island, and one of these visitors being the immortal Odysseus, and Cersei is kind of really intrigued by mortals throughout her life, and she discovers that she will risk anything for Odysseus. So this book is amazing. I'm just I don't know how to tell you guys properly how much I love this book, analytically. I just keep thinking it's amazing. That's all I can say about this book. I'm really struggling to put this into words. Okay, I really loved the character of Cersei. I loved her development throughout the book, and I loved that she was able to develop and become a better person, despite you seeing a lot of the Titans, I should say, in this book live such long lives that I guess they don't think about stuff like development or growth because they live forever. and I guess in terms of like mortality, there's no really consequence for their actions because they live forever. And Cersei, despite being immortal as well and being able to live forever, she still grows and becomes a better person, I think, because of her interaction with mortals and because of her fascination with them, I guess. And despite, I guess, being told all these disgusting things in her childhood and constantly being put down and being treated like basically like garbage by her family, Cersei is still able to draw her own strength, I guess, and use that strength to improve herself and be her own person. Despite the challenges that Cersei is put through, and she's put through hell in this book, horrible thing after horrible thing, she's still able to pull through and continue on living. One of the strengths I loved about Cersei was just her love, and how she literally faced up to titans and gods for those that she loved, and she drew strength, I would say, from that love, and how passionately she loved and wanted to protect those around her despite what people had done to her in her life. I'm so bad at talking analytically about the books that I love. This is a fantastic feminist book. If you love reading about amazing female characters from Greek mythology, this is definitely the book for you. The pacing is super slow, which I normally hate, but the writing makes up for it more than enough. It's fantastic, beautiful writing. I love Cersei. I love Cersei's strength. I think she's a great female character to read from, and this is a fantastic, beautifully written book that is going to stay with me a long time, and I'm definitely going to reread it in 2022 because it's definitely an all-time favourite of mine now. Read this book, please read it, it's amazing. The third book I read in December was Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. This is a young adult fantasy book, and we follow our main character Yadriel, who is part of a Latinx family, and Yadriel is transgender and his family is having real difficulty accepting his identity. And there's these roles in their family called Brujo, who are usually the male family members, and they can see spirits and they help set them free. Kind of spirits that haven't been set free are still tied to the living world for a particular reason, and the female members of the family are traditionally healers. So Yadriel wants to prove himself to be a real Brujo, so he sets out to summon the spirit of his recently murdered cousin. And murdered? Is that a spoiler that he's murdered? Oh my god. Ooh. No, it's not a spoiler. Okay, good. Yeah, so he sets out to find the spirit of his recently murdered cousin and set him free, but he summons the wrong person and accidentally summons this guy called Julian, who's known as like the school bad boy, and Julian is determined not to be set free until he makes sure and knows what happened to his friends and make sure that his friends are okay. So they kind of work together so that they can both get what they want. So it was an interesting way to explore traditional gender roles within the roles of the Brujo and Yadriel's identity, and I thought that it was an interesting way to explore and kind of bring to light the kind of toxic impacts that traditional gender roles can have on people and people's, I guess, mental health. So I did love Yadriel and Julian. I thought they were adorable and very, very cute. I loved it. But I didn't like Julian's lack of development. I think that there was a lot of things he left in a bad way, or wasn't willing to admit to himself that, you know, there was relationships, without spoiling it, with certain people that were left very poorly, and it was obviously really getting to him and hurting him, because you saw that it did, but still he said that he had no regrets and like was happy to leave things as they were, which I think was a little frustrating, because clearly there was some emotional maturity that needed to happen and some growth that needed to happen. I know he was a teenager, but still he just didn't seem to want to admit that, and it was kind of frustrating to read him just like not become, like, obviously their relationship, they were meant to, I saw it as like they were meant to help each other grow and become better people, and you saw Yadriel grow and become more confident, I guess less carefree and less like anxious about what everyone thought about him, which was great to read. I love reading stories like that. But where was Julian's growth, like what did Yadriel do for him, just like wasn't as evident. Obviously Yadriel did a lot for Julian. I don't mean in terms of what he was able to help him with. I mean in terms of becoming, I don't know, a more emotionally mature character or emotionally aware, because clearly Yadriel could see the issues that were there, and Julian, clearly the issues were bugging him, but just like didn't want to grow or admit that to himself or to anyone, which was frustrating. That's the only beef I really have with this book. I thought it was adorable and super sweet and a really interesting way to look at transgender issues and identity and gender roles. And I definitely liked this book more than the last Adrian Thomas book I read, because I read Lost in the Neverwoods and hated that. So this book has definitely got me back to reading Adrian Thomas. I rated Cemetery Boys 4 stars. The fourth book I read was Percy Jackson and the Last Olympian. This is the fifth and final book in the Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief series, and this is the book where all the other books have been leading up to. I enjoyed the battle scenes. They were awesome. They were super fun. I still think though that Battle of the Labyrinth I preferred over this one. I don't have much to say about this book. I definitely liked Battle of the Labyrinth better. I think that's definitely my favourite of the series. The battle scenes were fun and I enjoyed watching Percy grow up over these 5 books. I'm also excited though to get to know some of the other characters a little bit better. I still think Annabeth wasn't really... She was present in all of the books, but I don't think we really got to know her that well. I mean a little bit, but I would love to have seen a bit more from her perspective or get to know her a bit. Can someone tell me if she gets her own perspectives or more story in any of the other series? I would love to know, because I enjoyed reading her character and I enjoyed Percy and her's relationship. I thought it was, relationship. I thought it was cute. This book was a fun end to the series and filled with lots of fun battles and scary monsters as usual. I gave this book 4 stars. The final book I read in November, I literally finished it as I was pulling up to my New Year's Eve event, and that is Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong. This is the second book in the These Violent Delights duology, which is a retelling, if you didn't realise, of Romeo and Juliet. We follow Roma and Juliet, and they are both heirs to rival gangs in Shanghai in the 20s. And they a while ago had a romance until one of them betrayed the other, and they're forced to work together again when stories of a monster and a contagion are spreading through the streets of Shanghai, killing off members from both sides of the gang. So they have nothing, they have no other option but to work together to stop this monster. So I'm really conflicted about what I want to say about this book. I gave it 5 stars, but honestly, I think I'm going to bring it down to 4. I gave These Violent Delights 5 stars. I just think what threw me off was the pacing a little bit of this book, and maybe not the pacing, more that I think it was a bit repetitive. Like, the first half of this book just felt like a slightly different version of the first half of the last book. I don't know, has anyone else read that book and felt the same way? I feel like it was really repetitive and I was like, yeah, like I get it. I feel like I read this before. And I understand that the ending of the last book meant that certain things weren't able to happen at the start of this book. Wow, that doesn't make sense. I'm trying not to spoil. But still, it was really repetitive, and I think definitely the second half of this book made up for that. But while I was reading it, it was dragging a little bit. I did enjoy that we got to see a little bit more of the supporting characters. I remember definitely saying that in my last review, that I wanted to see more of the cousins and the friends in this book, because I think they were really interesting characters that deserved their own time. So I was happy that I was able to see a little bit more of them, and I think that definitely added to my enjoyment of the story. I would definitely recommend this duology. I think it's a really interesting and cool way to retell Shakespeare. I normally don't like Shakespeare, but I think this was a really fascinating way to retell it. Yeah, I loved this book. I think I am going to bring it down to a 4-star instead of a 5, just because the first half of this book for me dragged a lot and just felt like the sequel. But the end made up for it. I loved it. I love Roma and Juliet. They have all my love and they're very cute. And yeah, read this duology. It's good. I promise I'm trying to get better at articulating how I feel about books. It's a struggle, but I'm working on it. It's also incredibly hot right now, so my brain is absolutely fried. I met my goal of reading 40 books in 2021, which was amazing. I literally finished, as I said before, I finished Our Violent Ends. Well, I sat in the car for like a couple of minutes and then went in just as I pulled up to a New Year's Eve party. So I was very, very happy to meet my goal. I didn't meet it last year, I shortened it. I think I met it because I shortened it. So it was very satisfying to finally finish my goal this year. Overall, I had a fantastic reading year, and it was an amazing year because I started this channel. So I was very happy with my reading progress in 2021. Thank you so much for watching. Have you read anything I read in December? Let me know, and let me know what you thought about them, and let me know how your reading went in December. I'd love to know how many books you read and which books you liked and didn't like. If you would like to see any more of my horrible reviews or any of the other content I put out, feel free to subscribe. That would be awesome, and then you won't be able to miss any of the videos that I post. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in whatever I post next. Bye!